Welcome to Ramble On, counseling reflections on life and love, brought to you by Rambler Counseling NL.
This one is for both men and women who may be in that post-divorce or post-long-term relationship moment where you're experiencing singledom and, getting out there. Maybe you're dating, maybe you're not. We see a lot of like social media, TikTok, Instagram reels about, women and their independence and how we don't need men anymore, and things are different now because back in the 50s we were financially responsible. We were financially dependent on men to survive in the world. We couldn't even get credit cards on our own. And now as women, we have our own homes, our own cars, we have jobs, visas, we are financially self-sufficient. And also women who have already had families, created families through previous marriages or previous long-term relationships, it's also a different way of looking at partnership when you're older, say, after these long-term relationships and you already have children. You don't plan on having more children. So the partnership then becomes less about creating a family and creating a life versus what does that person bring to my life. And I see a lot of negative posts about, we don't need men and things like that. And then men getting angry at women because we're not good at receiving and not good at like accepting help and accepting them to be in our lives. But there's a lot going on here. And obviously you need to do what works for you, but being single now is not a negative thing. I met someone recently who I hadn't seen in several years, and they said, how are you doing? We were having some small talk, and, oh, you're still single? Because I've been divorced now 9 years. Yes, I'm still single. Now, what that looks like for me is very different maybe than for other people. We have very busy lives. I have 3 kids. I have a lot of responsibility. There's a lot going on in my world. And for me to have a partner in my life, that's going to look very different than it would have before I had children or before, any of these things were in my life. I own my own home. I have a car. I have a job. My bills are paid. I'm an only parent. There is no co-parent involved. So I do run the ship. And would it be great to have someone in my life who adds to my life? Absolutely. What that's going to look like for me is going to be very different than other people. And, we have to do what works for us and really try to turn off that external guidance or what society is saying and all these social media posts about like what it means to be in a relationship or what that looks like. And then we're going down these rabbit holes of attachment theory, and this person's avoidant and this one's anxious, and you shouldn't text for this many days back, and you shouldn't do this, and oh, make sure you don't look too needy, or make sure you don't look too eager, or there's just so many things out there that honestly, I strongly believe you should just ignore. Just ignore it completely. Do what's best for you. Do what's right for you. And you have to sort of start with friendship. The social world can start with friendship. Let's just meet people who we get along with, who we like to hang out with. Let's add friends to our lives. My friendships are a huge part of my world, and I get a lot of my needs met through my friendships. So does my life look like I have one person who is providing me with a lot of things that I need? No, my life looks like a lot of people providing me with the things that I need. Stimulating conversations, emotional support, sometimes financial support, all the things that I need, I have right now from different people, and that's okay too. And we talk about this independence that we have as adults too. And we live in a world where it's a little different. We don't live in community anymore. We're very isolated. And as a single person, you are responsible for a whole lot of things. And a lot of that comes from, sadly, having a history of poor relationships, possibly in the past. And when you go to depend on someone or you ask someone to do something and it doesn't get done repeatedly and you get disappointed and you discover you can't depend on that person, it creates a bit of a pattern where you sort of give up on asking people to do things because you feel like they're not going to follow through anyway. And that can sometimes develop into hyper independence. But I think it's important for us to learn through our friendships what it is to give and receive, and then create those healthy relationships that can eventually extend maybe into a healthy romantic partnership. I think that's a good start. Post-divorce for men and women looks very different depending on the relationship that you've just left. Maybe it was a positive ending. Maybe it was a mutual experience where you knew this was the termination of the marriage for all the good reasons. And maybe it wasn't. Maybe it was a toxic situation. Maybe co-parenting is not as peaceful as you'd hope it would be. Maybe you're rebuilding from scratch. There's a lot of factors. So I feel like as women and men at this age, post-divorce or post long-term relationship, if you're going out there and trying to repartner or add to your life in that way, I just want you to consider sort of building your life around what gives you joy, what gives you happiness, where can you get your needs met through friendships, through career, through fulfilling yourselves in other ways. And then as you're building on yourself and you're learning about who you are at this point in life, eventually you will naturally, organically attract someone who can fit into your world. And your world is going to be very different than anybody else's. And that is not to say it's better or worse. And we need to stop comparing ourselves to everybody out there and just do what's right for you. All the best. Again, sometimes we need to turn off the external noise, go inside, and just do what's best for you. Take care.
For more information or to book an appointment, check out ramblercounselingnl.ca or click on the booking links in my Instagram and Facebook bios. See you soon.